Greetings, Ventures! This is Lorne, your guild advisor, and welcome back to my skipped light novel content and review for DanMachi Season 2, or Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon Season 2. As most of you already know, if you watched my video on episode 1 of the second season, I'll be going over the skipped light novel content in the episodes week by week, and this time I'll try to make sure the video is not too long. I can't make any promises though, but I'll try to make sure I don't just cover every little thing. I'll be trying to cover the stuff that was skipped that I think is very important, and there's quite a few things in here that I do question the omission of, but first let me apologize to some of you. I know in the previous episode there was something that was skipped, but I didn't really talk about it too much because it was actually in the sub-story 1 for the DanMachi mobile game, DanMachi Memoria Freeze. But some of you guys had questions on why nobody in Aurario was talking about what happened on floor 18 when Belle defeated the Black Goliath, the irregular that spawned on the floor. And that's because the guild actually put a gag order on that entire event because they don't want anyone to know that both Hermes and Hestia were down there in the dungeon because gods aren't allowed to go in there. So as punishment, there was a gag order put on both the Familias, and also they were also fined a certain amount of Valis. It was a bit easier for Hestia Familia because they're poor, so a percentage isn't going to hurt them quite as much as a percentage from Hermes Familia, which is much bigger and more richer. But let's dive into the second episode. First of all, unlike the first episode, which adapts 80 pages of Volume 6, this only adapts about 62, covering pages 80 through 142. So the pace is getting a bit slower, so there's less stuff to cut, though a big portion of the cut from episode 1 was the omission of Soma Familia stuff, and I'll talk about that a bit later in this video as well, because again, we're seeing some stuff being taken out regarding Soma Familia. But the episode begins right after Apollo's War Game Challenge, and then you see Hestia basically just refuse it, and Apollo does mention that Hestia and her have some history back in heaven, where Apollo was trying to get with Hestia, but she outright refused him because, I mean, look at the man, he's disgusting. And in the light novel, Belle is actually looking around the room, and he notes that most of the people in Apollo Familia are like young and innocent looking, much like himself and Hestia, so he can see what Apollo's taste kinda is. And of course, Hestia and Belle leave the party, and you can see Hyacinthus at the door leaning back. In the light novel, Belle actually locks eyes with him, and I'm not sure why that was taken out because I think that just builds up the rivalry between the two, so a bit of a question there, wouldn't take too much effort to include that, but whatever. We go into the next scene where you see Belle and Hestia prepare for the day, and in the light novel, Hestia is actually preparing for work, so she's supposed to have her work outfit on, but it's not too big of a deal. But it's also mentioned in the light novel that Hestia plans to update Belle very frequently because of the danger of Apollo Familia possibly attacking him in the dungeon. And she also states that Belle should always try to be in crowded places, and also tried to pair up with Taki Mikazuchi's Familia for dungeon groups in case of dungeon group ambushes. And right before Belle opens the door, he senses like this lingering faintness of magic, and he tells Hestia to stand back while he opens the door, and here of course you don't see that happen. It's not that big of a cut, and of course Hestia Familia is immediately attacked. Their home is basically destroyed by Apollo Familia. One thing I am happy about that they kept in is Hestia's line about Apollo Familia destroying Hestia and Belle's love nest, and then Belle just questioning like, wait, what? I think it's really funny, and I'm glad they kept that part in. But you see the assailants attack Belle, and then Belle takes out his knife with Hestia in his hand. And basically what happens here is that you see a frame with Belle's attackers, and then the next frame is Belle successfully repelling them. And it's kind of awkward because it's kind of hard to tell what exactly happened, and I'm assuming they just cut this part out because it would be kind of hard to animate Belle carrying Hestia in one arm and then deflecting and dodging attacks with his knife, because that would be a hard animation sequence to get down with Hestia also being in his arms, but it would have been cool to see, but I understand why they didn't animate that part. And of course, we see Belle take Hestia and actually take advantage of his level 2 status and jump all the way up onto a roof. And of course, on that roof is Daphne and Cassandra, ready to confront Belle, and Daphne basically says that there is no escape from Apollo, that once Apollo sees something he wants, he does not stop until he gets it. Like, Cassandra and Daphne tried to escape Apollo by going from like city to city, country to country, and they still couldn't get away from him. And they show like an original scene with Apollo like fantasizing over a chessboard, and I think that does a good job of capturing just Apollo's obsession with Belle at the current moment. And Belle's refusal of Daphne's offer plays out a bit differently, like there's more fights happening in that sequence. Belle fights a few adventurers and then uses Firebolt and they get burnt, and that's when Cassandra actually heals them, and then Belle just sees how pointless it is to try and stay and fight because Cassandra is there just to heal them, and then more reinforcements come, forcing Belle to just retreat. And one important thing to note here is Cassandra's prophecy. She notes that the rabbit will jump over the moon and swallow the sun. Of course, the rabbit refers to Belle, and the sun, of course, refers to Apollo. And I won't say anything more than that because you'll obviously get more of that as we get into the later episodes. And then we get a scene of Lily and Welf wondering where Belle is, and this is another case of the anime failing to depict Lily's Cinderella magic, where she disguises herself as something. Because back when that trap was set up by that one adventurer for Lily to die to kill her aunts, that was actually her faking her death. Like, she would go back to the surface and always disguise herself as something else. Like, she is actually a Prum, but she usually disguises herself as a Cianthrope or a werewolf. And in this case, she is disguised as a werewolf, and the anime doesn't really depict that at all. So if you're wondering why people don't know who Lily is, or wondering why people don't recognize her when she's clearly Lily, it's because she is disguising herself, but the anime doesn't really depict it that well. And one scene they actually outright skip from the light novel is Hermes and Osphie actually watching these events unfold. Hermes comments that he's wondering what Freya is doing because you would think that Freya would not stand for Apollo just trying to fight Hestia Familia like this, but he thinks that Freya is just enjoying the moment and seeing how everything plays out. And then with the scene with Loki Familia, it's pretty much adapted pretty well. They omit Reveria and Gareth and just keep Finn in there, warning Eyes not to interfere because it would just cause complications with Apollo Familia. And they also add an original scene which also explains why Apollo Familia is able to even go out and attack Hestia Familia in the middle of broad daylight. And of course you see the conversation between Aina and the head of the guild, Royman. The guild can't really do anything because even though they would fine Apollo Familia for doing this, Apollo Familia doesn't really care. Because again, Apollo is obsessive and he doesn't care how many fines he has to pay. He's just going to force Hestia Familia to meet his demands. And there's also an explanation in the light novel where it says that mortals cannot actually kill gods or purposely try to do so. Only deities can kill deities. So basically, if Apollo Familia is successful in at least kidnapping Hestia, they can basically force Belle to join Apollo Familia because they can just threaten to send Hestia back to heaven. And once a god or goddess is sent back to heaven, they cannot come back down. And there are a few animated sequences that I did enjoy here. There is that moment when Belle basically throws aside Hestia because he has to fight, and they do a good animated sequence with him taking out about 3 Apollo Familia members. And then, of course, right after that is the Hyacinthus fight, which I do think they do a good job on. For the most part, there's pretty good animation. But the one thing they skip out on is the very end, where you see Belle basically just charge at Hyacinthus. But that's not exactly what happens in the light novel, because it seems kind of foolish for Belle just to do an all-out attack on a level 3 opponent when he's level 2, and just being able to get overpowered easily. Like, it's a pretty obvious move of Belle just charging straight at him. What actually happens in the light novel is Belle just doing a whirlwind of attacks, and Hyacinthus is just blocking and dodging with no effort. And then that's when, of course, Hyacinthus does that big strike where he actually slashes Belle's armor in the chest, destroying the armor and also getting that huge cut against Belle's chest. And here they have Hyacinthus say he's going to enjoy torturing Belle for a little bit by trying to cut off an arm or a leg. In the light novel, he doesn't say quite that. He says he's going to cut some of his tendons, but you do get the effect that Hyacinthus is very jealous of Apollo's affection for Belle, so he does not like Belle at all, and he's just wanting to torture him for a little bit. And of course, before Hyacinthus can torture Belle, we get another scene with Naza in it. For all the injustice done to Naza in Season 1, we're continuing to get more scenes of her, and here she does a really cool job of just laying down a bunch of arrows, preventing Hyacinthus to get close to Belle so Belle and Hestia can get away. And there is one small observation that Naza makes that the anime omits. But basically, since she has that huge vantage point, she can see a lot of Arario, and she notes that there's over 200 adventurers in this quest to get Belle and Hestia. And 200 is a rather large number even for Apollo Familia, so you're already getting the gist that something is up. There might be more than just Apollo Familia looking for Belle and Hestia. And of course, Belle and Hestia are surrounded once more, and then Taki Mikazuchi Familia comes in to save him. Oka, Mikoto, and Chigusa. Poor Chigusa gets a knife, which is supposed to be holding a spear. And actually, the one thing with Taki Mikazuchi Familia is that they are all versed in all manners of weapons. So even though Oka has a great axe in the anime, he's actually carrying a spear and a greatsword at the same time. And one thing changed here is that Welf and Lily actually arrive right after this, when Bell and Hestia actually run away after Mihawk tells them to, and they're surrounded by even more adventurers, and that's when Welf and Lily come in to save them. But they decided to just group the Taki Mikazuchi Familia save and Welf and Lily coming in at the same time, probably to save some time and then end the episode at a specific point. What I do like that they did here is they added a nice animation sequence with Lily basically jumping onto her way to a roof and then running and taking out a few of the Apollo Familia guys. And again with Lily and Soma Familia, they're like continuing to cut some stuff here. It makes me wonder if they're like trying to save all the Soma Familia stuff for one episode, if they'll like flash back to it, because like I said before, they skipped the prologue to Volume 6 that involves Lily and Soma Familia, and again they skip some more stuff here, because as you can see, Xanis, the leader of Soma Familia, confronts Lily in this episode, but in the actual light novel, Lily notices the Soma Familia emblem on some of the knocked out individuals, and then she makes her way and finds Xanis herself, and then pleads with him to basically stop the attack on Hestia and Bell. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because it is possible they're just going to group a lot of the Soma Familia stuff together into one episode. Though I do question why they're going about it this way. And then you have the scene with Hestia and Bell, and Hestia basically asking Bell to make a decision. Will he flee Orario or stay and fight the war game? And during this, in the light novel, Bell actually contemplates what life outside Orario would be like with Hestia, but then he thinks back and it all goes back to his inspiration to stay in Orario. His thoughts go to Eyes. So basically, there's only one decision he can make. And I know a lot of you are going to say Bell is really dense for not really understanding Hestia's confession in this scene. But do remember, like, he is dense, but do remember, Bell doesn't think of Hestia in that way, so he thinks that the love that Hestia is talking about is like the love of a god for her child, a god for her Familia member. And of course, they get discovered again, and Hestia has had enough, and she directs Bell to go to Apollo Familia's home. And here the scene is a bit different. Like, she does take the glove from Lon, but what happens here is kind of... It is funny in its own way, because she throws the glove right onto Apollo's face, which is really funny, especially the reactions of everybody. But what actually happens in the light novel, which I kind of would have preferred, is Apollo is actually right next to them, and Hestia, of course, just slaps the glove really hard across Apollo's face, and I would love to see Apollo's punk face get bashed in like that by a glove, even though it looks like he would enjoy it anyway. And some of you might be confused by this, but the people like just coming out of nowhere, after Apollo and Hestia declared the war game is official, those people are actually gods and goddesses that were waiting for the war game to be confirmed, because they want to see it happen. They're excited. And then Welf makes his way back to Hestia and Bell and says that Soma Familia has taken back Lily, and Bell, of course, is wanting to go to Lily right away, and Hestia says, "Don't worry about this, Bell. I'll figure out a way to save Lily. You need to get stronger." And of course he does, because we saw what happened earlier with the Akintis being the level 3 against Bell's level 2. He needs all the training he can get. And so, of course, he goes to Loki Familia and tried to get Eyes to once again train him. And Tione has to make a big show and then direct him to Tiona and Eyes. And that's where we end the episode, with Eyes agreeing to train Bell. And of course we get Tiona as well, which kind of makes me happy hearing Tiona call Bell Argonaut, especially if you have been playing through the Damamo game and the Argonaut anniversary event. And as for my thoughts on the ending song, I thought it was okay. It didn't really excite me too much. The visuals in it are very interesting if you already read the light novels, so you know what's going on, but hopefully some of those visuals in the ending change as the season goes on, because it is kind of low effort animation wise, because it's really just a bunch of stills. But I do get a good enjoyment out of seeing the scenes that you see in that ED, because I know what it's trying to convey. Again, in the episode, there were small fight sequences here and there that were changed or just outright taken out, but there are cuts that need to be made for the anime. But overall, I think they did a good job at depicting Apollo Familia's attack on Hestia Familia. I do still question the Soma Familia stuff that they're skipping, and again, I will touch on it in a later video if they keep skipping out on it, but I think they're just going to save all of it for a future episode and maybe flashback to some of these scenes that they're skipping right now. But overall, guys, I am satisfied with the episode. If you do play Danmachi no Moria Freeze, Sub-Story 2 has a small original scene with Aiz, Bell, and Tiona training, so check that out. I'm happy that it's an original scene this time and not them like covering something that they skipped over. Like, I hope that they cover as much light novel content as they can and don't just like put the stuff they skip in the sub-stories in the mobile game, because not everyone wants to play the mobile game and the anime should stand alone as a product itself. But again, if you don't know about the mobile game Danmachi no Moria Freeze, I will leave a link in the description for you guys to check that out. And I of course make videos on that as well. With the ending of this episode, we stop on page 142 of the light novel out of 257 pages, so we're past the halfway point in the light novel, and a lot of us were thinking that light novel 6 would be about 5 episodes, with light novel 7 being 7 episodes for that split of 12 episodes that the anime was confirmed for. But at this current pace, it looks like it would just actually be 4 episodes for volume 6, but they do have some stuff to cover that they skipped, like the Soma Familia stuff. So hopefully we have 3 more episodes out of this light novel, because there's no reason for them to plow through this light novel in 4 episodes if they do intend to do just volume 6 and 7. But guys, that's all for this video. If you like this video and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. As always, if you want to keep up on what I'm doing, follow me on Twitter and join my Discord. And as always, continue enjoying your time venturing in Aurario and the dungeon. This is Lorne, your guild advisor, signing out.